evening. My name is Fumi. You know that already. And it's Public Eye Life. You know that already. What you may not know is that this is the one before the last. After next week, I will not be doing Public Eye Life anymore. Don't worry. There will be Public Eye, the show itself, in the fall of 2020. That's in September. By the grace of God and this year, and how it chooses to live its life and our lives. It's been great spending this time with everybody through the lockdowns, through all the uncertainty. It started very weirdly. Nobody knew what to do, what to think, and we just wanted to do this because we didn't know where the world was going. And I can say that, I mean, generally across the world, most people have been incredible and been brave. It's been really difficult times for people, for businesses, for family. It's also been times of growth in many other ways too. A crisis is a time to reset. Okay, I'm still wearing my wrap because I was cold. All right, let's take it off so you can see my dress. All right. So today's show is going to be about the environment and ideas. When we started talking about it, everybody was wondering, so what do these two have in common, particularly as regards Nigeria? Well, we're going to start our conversation with a conservationist, and that's because there is a story that of course, everybody knows that COVID is supposed to have started from the wet markets in China. Partly, some of the challenges with the wet markets is the kind of trading in animals that goes on in there and the sorts of animals. And there's a story about the pangolin, a small, beautiful creature, scaly creature from Africa, basically, and certainly from Nigeria, being traded between many African countries and Asian countries, having been said to be allegedly responsible for the outbreak of COVID. Behind all of that, of course, is an illicit trade in wildlife. And so, who's behind it? What is it really about? In the first instance, this is an illicit trade. To make it worse, it's not even, that wouldn't excuse it, but it's not even maybe the Nigerian hunters or whoever is responsible for it who make the most money out of this really big lucrative business. So the first conversation would be with Charles Emogor, who is a scientist and specializes in ecologies, an ecologist, and is a fellow of the Wildlife Conservation Society, as well as a student, PhD student at the University of Cambridge. He should be just from the UK. Charles, hi, darling. Hi. Don't worry, I call everybody darling. I call everybody darling. So don't mind, don't ignore.
Hi, Fumi.
Hi. Hello, hi, how are you?
Not bad, I'm all right. And you?
Good. Thank you for joining us. I hear you were in a meeting until a few minutes ago.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my headphones on. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on the show.
Right. So Charles, I mean, tell me first. Apology because I hear there was some confusion as to whether you were in Cambridge, off Cambridge, with Cambridge. But I'm correct to say that you're a PhD student in Cambridge. You're a scientist,
yeah,
an ecologist, and of course you're a fellow of the Wildlife Conservation Society. Is that correct?
Yes, so, that's correct. I just had to check that because a fellowship is a big thing, and I just don't want to, put a false image. I mean, I wasn't the one doing it, and it was obviously a mistake, but it was just good to confirm that I'm not a Cambridge University fellow, but a fellow of WCS.
Nonsense, you're just a bad quality Nigerian. Because we run with everything we are given. I love you, funny fellow, but I get it, and thank you for bringing that up. So let's start with this. What is a pangolin?
Yeah, pangolin is a scaly mammal, the only scaly mammal we have on the planet. Pangolins do have scales, like I mentioned, and they occur in just Africa and Asia. So they are animals that look like an armadillo, but not quite. Just imagine an armadillo, but rather than the rings, replace them with pangolins. I think, yeah.
But what I don't understand is, in the first instance, apparently they don't breed in captivity, so they have to be in the wild.
That is correct.
So why do people want them? What are they doing with them?
Sorry, I think I didn't get you. My internet is quite sketchy, but So we just have to manage with that. Did you do you want to say that again?
Why is the pangolin valuable? Why are they trading?
Oh yeah, so it's unfortunate that their unique trait is increasing the demand for them. So because they're the only mammals with scales, and you can imagine, you know, ideally mammals don't have scales, but they just defy that law, so to speak. People just believe they have some, you know, some uniqueness in them. Obviously, they're unique, but that their uniqueness could translate into some health benefits. And lots of countries trade in pangolins, and they use them for traditional medicine. That's where the demand really comes from, and that's what's really decimating pangolin population. But you also have a lot of people in Nigeria eating pangolin as traditional wild meat, and for food, and herbalists using pangolins, and some people just killing pangolins because they don't like them. But the main demand comes from the Asian continent, particularly China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Laos, and a few other countries, for their use in Chinese traditional medicine.
So the question is, what is the truth really? Is there any link whatsoever between the outbreak of COVID-19 and the trade in pangolin? Because the story is that pangolins were part of the animals that were being traded in the wet markets where the outbreak was meant to have occurred.
Yeah, that's very true. And I always say this with so much caution, just so people don't misunderstand it. Yes, there is a link. To answer your question, yes, there is a link between the origin of COVID-19 and pangolins. But that link is not established, and it's still very poor. The information around that, I'm just going to explain the bit. So pangolins have coronaviruses. Bats have coronaviruses. So many animals in the world have viruses. And it's estimated that about 70,000 viruses are still unknown that occur in animals. And so what happened, or what researchers think happened in China, was that the pangolins that were illegally traded, obviously pangolins are protected by law, not to be traded in so many countries, including Nigeria, and recently China as well. But also there's a global ban of pangolin trade, pangolin trade. And so this pangolin was traded on the market, and there must have been a jump. Well, pangolins have not been said to be the origin, but linked to the origin, which would be bats, according to this research, which is really high standard. And so the coronaviruses in bats jumped from bats to humans through pangolins. That's because pangolins also have coronaviruses. So this research shows that there's a similarity between the coronaviruses in bats and SARS-CoV-2. That's the virus that causes, virus responsible for COVID-19. 96 similarities between these viruses. The human, let's just call it the bat and human coronavirus now. But the only problem why the bat coronavirus could not get to humans is because the part of the coronavirus which would enhance the binding with the human body is not similar, and so it needed an intermediary, and that's where potentially coronaviruses in pangolins came on and enhanced that transfer. And so you see on its own, including bats, if they were left in the bush, I guess that's something we'll talk about again. That wouldn't happen. But it's because of the situation, humans' ill treatment for nature, the natural world, that led to that spillover of the virus now from bats to humans through pangolin. So that's the theory, and it's backed up with evidence. But again, even the researchers have made it clear that what they've found so far is just suggestive, it's not indicative, and there's a gray area there that we might never know what happened, because immediately the outbreak happened, and it was said to come from Wuhan, just to curb the transfer of more and the spread of the virus. The market was shut down, so there's no room for further sampling, for further viral testing and virology work that would enhance and strengthen the evidence that we have right now. But that's pretty much the indication or link pangolins have with coronaviruses.
Do you know, right now I'm sitting here, and if this was human beings sitting in front of me, I just want to give us a slap. I mean, we're so irresponsible. We're so irresponsible to nature. We're so irresponsible. Part of the research that I have is that around December or November, thereabouts in 2019, don't worry, that's my NEPA or disco, whatever they want to call themselves, now going in and out. Around December, late 2019, there was a big cache of illicit pangolin caught, in some parts of Asia, which were shipped from Africa, including Nigeria. The value of that particular consignment that was seized was around about $17.9 million. So we're talking quite a bit of money here in the trade. Exactly. We're not even aware of how lucrative this is as a business out of Nigeria. And is it a business really? What is it? How does it happen?
I mean, pangolin trading is now organized crime. That a lot of people who have invested in this, and mainly from the demand side. So we've got pangolins in Asia and pangolins in Africa, just in these two continents, in the world, and equally split, 4 in Asia, 4 in Africa. The 4 pangolins in Asia are doing badly. Population-wise, the populations are declining, and you can hardly find them. And that's also as a function of the increasing demand for their meat and scale, especially scales for traditional medicine in places like China. But in Vietnam, it's been shown that pangolin meat is considered a luxury meat. So it's just for the elites and the rich people. And so it's high priced, and that's just how it changed from country to country. But there are also pangolins in Africa. About a decade ago, we didn't have the surge in demand from Asia, so pangolin populations were doing all right, relatively all right. But right now, you've got this increasing demand, and because the Asian populations are declining, they're now coming from the African pangolins, and it just has to be that they're preying upon the low socioeconomic levels of people in these African countries where pangolins occur, and they help do the collection. And so there's a collection point, in the local communities. Most of the hunters that I work with also feed some of these people who come around hawking, or rather asking people to sell pangolin scales. And then perhaps there's a national collation point and a regional one before it's shipped out. I also have data showing the huge mass of pangolin seizure that has been pangolin scales from seizures that are linked to Nigeria, not just Africa this time, but linked to Nigeria. And we're talking about at least 144,000 kilograms of scales, and that's just really roughly, we're talking about 140,000 pangolins that might have died just to produce that number.
Oh,
and so you have
140,000 pangolins for
more than that, really. That's really a conservative estimate, and you have so much money behind this, and this is just less than 10% of the number of shipments that the confiscations are just 10% of what the trade really looks like on the ground. So there's so much that's happening. Pangolins are dying, and coronavirus now, put pangolins on the spotlight a bit, although for the wrong reasons. But it also, it shows the ill relationship we have with nature as humans, and what we can do in the future to reduce that. If pangolins were left in the wild, if pangolins were bats as well were not traded and not hunted, this wouldn't happen. let's assume, the research we have now is true and it stands. Although there's some evidence, but it's not conclusive, like I said. But that's not the important point. It's about how we can reconnect our values with the natural world, and not just for the animals that we know about, but for other animals as well. Other animals that have not been shown to have any viruses. Like we've talked about Ebola, right? We know how Ebola came about. It's from human interaction with other non-human primates, and HIV as well, MERS and SARS, and there's so many diseases. So coronavirus, COVID-19 is yet another instrument to remind us of our relationship with the natural world and how we can reconstruct that and be responsible. We are supposed to be we're supposed to be guardians of the natural world and not a bully species.
When we talk about conservation in Nigeria of the natural world, oftentimes people think it's an elitist thing. I mean, I'm going to go back a bit because there's something that's annoying me, it's vexing me, and I have to change it because I'm thinking these poor pangolins. Actually, what we're talking about, the trade in pangolin from Nigeria to Asia is really to serve two stupid purposes. I mean, the first one I'm not quite sure about. That's just Chinese head. And in my Nigerian head, what I hear is juju. I'm not like, that's just like
exactly. Yeah.
And why would we be supporting somebody else's juju? One. Two.
Yeah.
On the other hand, what I hear is that it's just something for somebody to say, I better pass my neighbor. It's Chinese of I better pass my neighbor because the meat is an elitist meat. So if I can eat pangolin, it means I have more money. Even if we are unsettling the ecological balance of the world, it's annoying. I'm really personally vexed. It is. About it. Not that any reason is good enough, but those reasons are particularly, for me, seemingly completely wasteful and unhelpful.
Yeah, and that's it, and not just for pangolins, other species as well, including the natural world as an entity in terms of the environment. How humans are degrading the environment, plastic pollution, flooding, even noise pollution. A lot of people don't talk and think about. Why we would rather honor generators than make sure we have electricity. And I'm not talking about the common man now in Nigeria, but I'm talking about people who are in power to fix these problems that we have, rather than contributing to that societal good. They want people to struggle on their own, and when that happens, there's always loopholes where people of a higher class can always.
Yeah, both ways. I'm not sure whether it's my side or your side, Charles. There's a bit of, challenge with the internet. But I can see that, I can see somebody, I couldn't see who it was, made a comment that perhaps coronavirus outbreak is a blessing, so at least a blessing for the pangolins, so that maybe we'll leave the pangolins alone. Charles, are you back with me?
Yeah. I'm still here. Yeah, I lost you.
Don't worry about it. This happens every time we're going live, so it's kind of like we just roll with it. But somebody made a point where she said, perhaps the outbreak of COVID-19 is a blessing for the pangolin population in the world. But then that also means, going further, is this a wake-up call? Do you think it's a sufficient wake-up call for the issue of a better relationship with the natural world, especially given the fact that when you're talking about conservation in Nigeria, people hear Oyibo, that's just an Oyibo thing. It's a very Western thing.
Yeah,
none of our business.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I saw that comment as well, and I thought it was great. Although, it was a comment and a question. I think, it's a blessing in disguise. But also it's just my thought, and I wouldn't conclude now. I call it a plot twist. I wrote a blog that was published in PBS a few maybe days or about a week ago. You can check it up. I think it's titled Pangolin Conservation, is COVID-19 a blessing? Something like that. Maybe just check PBS. I've really forgotten what it's called. So there I talked about what we're seeing now. Oh, okay, good. What we're seeing now, and what would likely happen in the future. And what we're seeing now is that countries are taking action. So China increased the protection of pangolins within the country, and they've also removed pangolins, use of pangolin scale from their traditional medicine. Although we're getting new evidence that that's really not true. So in a way, tricking the world to say, well, we've done this, but really they haven't. So what happened on the ground is some companies, manufacturers still have the license to use pangolin scales for traditional medicine. So just like restricting it to a selected few, perhaps they can checkmate and all that, but people could still, if people can still afford it, they would get it, right? So we're not sure what that really means, but generally there's also been the ban, a call for wildlife ban, shut the markets and all of that. I am pro ban, although I think those bans should really look at the be situation specific and not a blanket ban for all. I've been to wildlife markets in Cross River, and I've seen so many pangolins on the market, and pangolins are not supposed to be sold because it's illegal to do that, and people don't care, quote unquote, don't care. And this situation highlights that need for us to care, because let's imagine what happened. The outbreak was somewhere in Nigeria. China responded. The world applauded China in a bit, because after it happened, they had erected some hospitals and they had like beds for people. Let's face it, how would Nigeria really handle such situations if it hit Nigeria the way it's hit in so many countries in the Western world? It's going to be so bad. But the fact it originated there doesn't mean Nigeria doesn't have the same conditions for it to originate here. The transfer of wild meat, the harvesting of wild animals, including the wanton deforestation that's happening across the world, is happening in Nigeria, it's happening in Cross River as well. So I think it's a blessing in disguise, but it's left for us as humans, especially those in power, to act upon this opportunity and this leverage. I think right now one of the good things is that there might be public will to act, because people don't want to die, right? So if there's a ban and the government comes up with a legislation or something that would enhance protection of pangolins, or other wildlife, or just the natural world in general, there will be less kickback from the public. But there's always the need for someone to take the first step. But I think as Nigerians,
that's what I'd like you to speak to. I mean, before then, I'd like to say, if anybody has questions for Charles, put the questions in the question box, and I will pull it up. So now we really need to go to what needs to be done in terms of what, because you are very good at painting these scary scenarios and walking away side because I just realized that if that outbreak had happened in a Nigerian market, in a Nigerian wildlife market, that would not have been good.
No, it would have been,
That's just the pangolin. As we can see, there are other viruses in other animals. So it could be something else tomorrow that we know nothing about. That is
absolutely
scary. So that is really scary. So what would be your suggestion, especially on this end, for the government, for the people? What sort of awareness do we need to begin to shift this? Because as you said already, people understand and nobody wants to die, especially at this kind of scale. So how do we domesticate this knowledge? Hopefully get some sort of traction.
I think we have to first of all acknowledge fact. There's so many theories right now about the origin of coronavirus. Some say it's from 5G, some say it's some Chinese plot to destroy the world, and some people even say Bill Gates and all of that stuff. What evidence do you...
Some people say it's Thanos.
Okay. Yeah. What evidence do you have? I think Nigeria, or rather Nigerians, have to really come back home and start looking at fact and really being critical about stuff. You could look at all of this stuff and then go your way. You don't have to listen to what I'm saying. It might be what I want to believe, but a lot of people still don't think that what we are facing now is a zoonotic disease. And by zoonotic, I mean a disease that can pass through, be transferred from an animal to humans. And if there's no appreciation for reality, then there would be no incentive to work towards change. Hopefully the guys at the top really appreciate this and they want to act. But it's not just for the leadership of Nigeria, who to a large extent are not doing what they're supposed to do. Because if you have annexed pangolin harvesting and trade, and put them up there and say it's illegal, you should go around and enforce what you're doing. But you can go out on a regular day on a wild meat market and you would find pangolins. And I'm talking about pangolins, but they're other species. So, there's the need for enforcement of the law, but also raise awareness. While you talk about COVID-19, COVID-19 is everywhere. There's stories and songs about it, even on YouTube. We also need to talk about, how we can stop the next outbreak, which we have seen to be, to possibly originate from Nigeria, and not just Nigeria, even Cameroon, even Gabon, even Indonesia. So many countries that still trade in wild animals. That interaction with the natural world in a negative way is just what's problematic. And we don't have to restrict it to animals that we are comfortable with, that we know a lot, but we just have to know that some diseases are novel, like coronavirus is novel. That's why it couldn't jump from bats to humans. It possibly needed pangolins because of the novelty in it. It needed some kind of dynamic and human created environment. And you never know what might happen. Putting a python in the same bag with a grass cutter might just mix fluids and blood. And yeah.
I go to a market, the seafood market, and there are crocodiles, there are pythons, there are snakes, all of them like that. And I would look at it and this is interesting. It's not interesting for me. Stop.
Yeah. It's not interesting. It is a sad thing talking about it, but also I do appreciate that, people on the ground do most of the things they do just to survive. So I'm talking from a position of privilege here. And while I might be condemning those actions, I do appreciate the need to eat and, the need to uphold culture at some level. But I think there's just so much that we can there's just so much land that we can want to uphold our culture, right? So if we're born, Africans, bushmeat, and I've had bushmeat before, so I'm not demonizing stuff, in the past with, limited knowledge and all of that stuff. But right now, we just have to think about what we're ready to prioritize and what we're ready to lose. Do we want to lose our generation, human race, and preserve our culture? And just to add that, if hunting is done at a local level, and there's evidence supporting this, where you have less transfer of wild animals and you have, things are being processed and eaten on site, you don't have like a wildlife market, you don't have like a wet market you have in some parts of the world, there's a reduced risk of zoonosis. So it's all of this transfer like you talked about. I've seen videos even on social media of two guys, I've forgotten the account, someone tagged me to it, they were chewing on crocodile meat, and that particular species is protected and they're supposed to be arrested, but no one is doing anything. That's why I talk about appreciation for the dangers that we stand to get. And I think that's happened already. I guess that's the reason why it's already protected and it's illegal to hunt them. But how about the enforcement? If people can do that and post it on social media and no one is saying anything, we just have to do better. We really have to do better.
At the end of the day, we're talking about the foundation of some of the problems we have in Nigeria, because it's not so much the laws, also the institutions that will enforce the laws. And it's not only on the law enforcement end, it's also on the end of, the quality of life of people, and also regulations around how things are done. So even the
absolutely,
market, how the market's done, what can you have, what can you not have? Because you can't say to people who are desperate anyway and say, okay, you take your livelihood from them. So they're like, okay, but I might die tomorrow. That's tomorrow. I'm dying today. That sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Complex issues at stake here. But I thank you, Charles, for at least raising this flag. There's one question. My lady here says I should shut up.
Go for it.
There's one question. Somebody's saying, is Charles? And she says she thinks you're Carl. It's Charles, and that's my bad pronunciation. I'm not English. I don't bother with English. So is Charles a vegetarian? Are you trying to force us all into vegetarianism or veganism or something?
No. I'm not vegetarian. And I don't think I will ever be vegetarian. I have conversations with my friends who are vegetarians, and I tell them, listen, I'm not vegetarian, and I respect that, and I really want to be, but my culture has been meat eating, and I grew up in Nigeria, and I didn't have to eat meat all the time. So right now is my time to eat meat. You know what? Let me have it. But I do appreciate the dangers of consumption of meat. Maybe not so much in this part of the world, but did you know that in countries like Brazil and that large chunks of the forest have been deforested just so they could plant soybeans to feed animals. And so this is still part of the problem. It's coming down. In Nigeria, you have the headsmen taking cows around, and those animals could also have diseases that could transfer to humans. So what I do is reduce my consumption of meat. I've gone months without eating meat. I've gone sometimes weeks without eating meat. Sometimes it's really system.
Yeah, I mean, Charles, I'm going to need to round up very quickly, but the
Okay.
point I've come to is really important. Well, everything is important, but that point, because at the end of the day, it really boils down to the way we are treating the world we live in as human
Absolutely.
beings.
Absolutely.
We produce more than we need. We waste stuff. We treat other species, other animals, other plants. We treat everything badly. And for us in Nigeria in particular, the next conversation is interesting for me because I'm going to talk about ideas, and people don't see the connection between ideas. And I'm like, if you have a society where ideas don't matter, people will sell what they can sell. So they sell animals, they sell people, and a lot of the problems around the world, certainly in Nigeria, is linked to our relationship with the environment, including erosion in the northern part of Nigeria, and that affects the Chad Basin and Boko Haram situation, the herdsmen situation, and all the big political and economic issues have a serious ecological and environmental ramification, I think. Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's linked. We have just seen, just to conclude, we have seen how linked the environment is with public health, and how linked it is with the economy, because the economy is suffering, and it might even continue for months after now. And so the whole world is linked. We as humans are linked to, and our lives are tied to the environment and other parts of it. So we just have to act right. We are privileged to be the one making decisions. While we make these decisions, we also have to prioritize ourselves, which is fine. But right now, we're not even doing that. We're just being stupid. And the reason I say this is by destroying the hands that feed us, literally the hands that feed us, and causing so much danger and so much chaos. So I just think we have to reconstruct our relationship with the natural world. We should chat about these things to family and friends, and tell somebody that eating that stuff could actually be, or consuming or buying that stuff could actually be the source of the next outbreak. You never know. I hope it never happens, and you hope it never happens, but I'm sure the guys in China also hoped it never happened, but it did. So that's reality.
Okay, we have a new prayer point for Nigeria. May the next one come from here. The next one not come at all.
We have to act right, though.
All right. Thank you, Charles. Thank you very much.
So you might just want to follow Pangolino_ORG on Instagram, and I think on Facebook and on WhatsApp as well. Sorry, on Twitter. That's the handle for my research and a bit about pangolin art, just raising awareness through pangolin arts and fostering public engagement. But thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I will follow, and we'll put the information out there, even in the edited one, so that other people will know and follow too.
Oh, that would be sweet. Thank you so much. Yeah, well done. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.